Okay, so I'll just start and we'll just record. Not, I have to edit this down to mash it down for later on.
Sure.
So just make it fit in our program. So
You bet.
let's switch this on here.
There we go.
Do you want to wear the earphones or you prefer not
I
to?
prefer not to
Okay.
just hear your voice. Let me just make sure everything's off here so this doesn't bother you. Okay. Damn it. There we go.
Is that going to work?
I think it's going to work. Well, just bear with me.
How about with this? Maybe if you can set it up on this thingy. You want it like in an angle?
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
This
Nice.
thing, it will fold down
Wow.
here.
That is solid. There we go. Let's see. There we go. You are a genius.
Yeah, I've been told that. I don't know if it's true.
I think it has to be accurate.
Okay, here we go.
All right, here we go.
And I'll just read a little introduction. And let me know if this is not accurate.
Okay.
But I wrote this up, so.
All right.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. This is KUNR Reno Public Radio. I'm Steve Shadley. Just about anyone who visits San Francisco wants to take a good look at the Golden Gate Bridge. The bridge is an American landmark that's not easily forgotten, and for one man, it holds an even deeper meaning. When Kevin Hines was a teenager, he tried to take his own life by jumping off of the bridge into the bay below. Fortunately, Kevin survived his leap, and now he spends time talking about the experience in hopes of deterring others from attempting suicide. Kevin joins us at KUNR to share his message. In fact, he's in Reno visiting community members at Truckee Community College to raise awareness about suicide prevention. Kevin, hi, I want to welcome you to Reno.
Hi, Stephen. It's good to meet you.
Well, just tell us about that day. What happened and why did you choose the Golden Gate Bridge?
Stephen, if you can imagine for a moment being inside of the most epic brain pain you've ever experienced. I had been dealing with a severe diagnosis of bipolar disorder, type 1 with psychotic features, which is a severe form. And it was something that I had fought with mostly internally without asking people for much help. I had been in treatment. I had been seeing a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I was lying to them. I was telling them what I thought they wanted to hear. I consequently was also telling my mom and dad what I thought they wanted to hear. And I came to a place in a great deal of mental instability where I believed that I was my family's greatest burden. I hear this all the time. It's a common theme among people who believe they are useless and worthless, have terrible self-loathing issues along with a mental illness, and find themselves devastated by it, but they don't ask their family for help, and they think their family hates them. That is where my mind state was, and that is what led me to travel via bus to the Golden Gate Bridge and attempt to take my life.
And so you traveled from where?
I lived in San Francisco at the time, and from my dad's home, who I was living with, mom and dad divorced, to the Golden Gate Bridge via one stop off at City College to drop my courses there, and then off one train, one bus to the Golden Gate Bridge.
And so how long ago was this?
This was in the year 2000. This was, as a matter of fact, it was September 25th, 2000, when I attempted to die by suicide.
So tell us more about that day. So you arrived at the bridge, and you
Yeah.
took a little walk, and what happened?
I had been hearing voices in my head screaming that I had to die, that I had to jump, the entire bus ride there, crying my eyes out. I had paced across the span of the bridge. You know, it's a 2-mile stretch of roadway. I had paced across that span for 40 minutes. Bikers, joggers, tourists, even runners, even police officers searching for suicidal people all went by me. And I ended up hearing that voice one last time. You must die, jump now. And I did.
So there were people walking around, as you say.
Oh, you bet.
And so you got up on the side of the bridge?
No.
Okay.
No. I walked back toward the traffic railing. I sprinted forward, and I catapulted myself over the rail. People think that that's the most important part of the story. I don't agree. I think the most important part of the story is what follows. Doctors call what happened to me being shocked into reality from my psychosis. The millisecond I hit free fall was an absolute instant regret. The recognition that I had just made the greatest mistake of my life, and I was going to die. In the 4-second fall from 220 feet above the water, 75 miles an hour, that's 25 stories. In the 4-second fall, I said, what have I just done? I don't want to die. God, please save me. And then I hit the water. I went 70 feet beneath the water's surface, and then I opened my eyes. My impression was that you died on impact. I didn't think that there was any way to come back from this. I didn't think survival was possible. But here I am, alive and drowning. I frantically moved to the surface, my legs immobile. I ended up barely making it to air before I passed out, but I did. I remember thinking to myself, Kevin, you can't die here. You can't die here, Kevin, because if you do, no one will ever know you didn't want to. No one will ever know you knew you made a mistake. It's important to note that of the 36 Golden Gate Bridge jump survivors, which means that's the 1% of those that have survived this fall, of the over 2,000 that have died at that harbinger of death, the 1%, 19 have come forward to say they had that very same instant regret. Now, mind you, that's 36 survivors in 80 years. A lot of those people who survived have now gone on to die of natural causes. We're talking about a bit over 20 that are still alive today. And 19 of the bit over 20, the majority, came to say they all had that instant regret. That shock into reality from psychosis. The recognition about what you actually just did. People who are suicidal, most of them are in a state of such mental anguish, such instability. They know not what they're doing. They don't mean their actions, but they, in the midst of psychosis, believe they have no other option. That's where I was.
So you're in the water, and you're desperately seeking air, and you're, like you say, 70 feet below the surface of the ocean. And so what do you remember at that point? Did you see sunlight, and on top of the water?
Well, not initially. But I got closer and closer to what I saw was a lit circle of water above me. It was fight or flight. I had to get there. My only option was survival. I couldn't die that way. I broke the surface. I bobbed up and down in the water, and I prayed. God, please save me. I don't want to die. I made a mistake. Amazing things came into play to save my life that day, but I'll save those for the speech.
Okay.
All right.
So were you injured in any way?
Oh, upon impact, I shattered my T12, L1, and L2 lower vertebrae into shards like glass.
And so were you incapacitated? Were you able to?
My legs were immobile.
You were able to move
I
your
only
arms.
got to the surface using my arms.
What were you thinking at this point? When finally you emerged from the water, and like you say, you were praying.
I didn't think I was going to make it. I thought I'd die there because I kept going down. I couldn't stay afloat. It was too hard. My boots were waterlogged. It was a mess. I actually made my peace with the world because I thought I was going to go. And several things came into play to keep me alive. One of the most important ones I will share with you is that after some miraculous events, Coast Guard officers got in the water and pulled me to safety. And if it wasn't for those Coast Guard officers and several other things, I wouldn't be here today. Look, I have a brain disease, all right? This is chronic. It's with me every day. Every symptom I ever had before that jump still remains. Paranoid, delusions, depression, mania, hallucinations, auditory and visual, all of that still exists. But today I'm able to fight it, tooth and nail, every day, no matter what. One of the things I express to people who are in suicidal crisis right now is that these are thoughts, right? They come from our brain because of pain we're experiencing. But we don't have to act on our thoughts. We don't have to engage with our thoughts if they're negative and dangerous and can hurt people. What we do need to do is turn to the closest person next to us who loves us and tell them the truth. What the closest people to us need to do when they see their loved one in such pain is ask the real question. Be blunt. Are you in danger of suicide? All over the world, there's this myth that if you say that, you'll put the thought in their mind. It's nonsense. And I'm not speaking from just personal experience. Suicidologists, the people who study suicide prevention all over the world, have determined that by asking someone who is actively suicidal, are you suicidal? You tend to get a truthful answer. By asking someone who is not suicidal, they tend to look at you sideways and go, get away from me. No way. Why would you ask me that? But if you ask the person the question in the time of their greatest need, they might just look at you and say, how did you know?
And no one had ever asked you that before?
No one had ever asked me that before.
Would that have changed things in your mind?
100%. I had made a pact with myself on that bus ride there. If one person comes up to me and says, Kevin, Kid, are you okay? Is something wrong? Or can I help you? I would have told them everything and begged them for help. We're afraid to ask that question. We're afraid of the response, and maybe negativity. We fear that, what if the person's violent? Look, if you don't ask it, they could die. And their mother and their father could lose them. And their brother and their sister could lose them. And their friends and their loved ones can lose them. And if you've lost someone to suicide, I'm not saying that it's your fault if you didn't ask that question. What I am saying is that the blame and guilt that is associated with suicidal crisis needs to stop. That blame game doesn't belong to anyone. It doesn't even belong to the person who died. They were in the greatest amount of mental pain they had ever experienced, and they just wanted the pain to stop. They died by suicide, just like anyone would die from liver, lung, or heart disease. Except it's the brain which we neglect. Let's start taking care of our brain health. We might see a world of difference on this planet, around the globe.
So now today, looking back at your experience, are you glad that that happened so that you are sitting here today and sharing this story?
I am so glad, appreciative, thankful, and blessed to still be alive 16 years past the day I should have died. Stephen, right now, I'm doing something with my team that I've wanted to do for a very long time, that I've dreamt about for decades. I'm making a film, a documentary called Suicide: The Ripple Effect. It's a movie about the devastating ripple effects of suicide, but much more importantly, it is a film about the power of hope, the positive power of hopeful stories that are helping people all over the world stay alive. None of us brain health advocates, right? We can't save a life. Just because we talk to people, we tell a story, we're not saving a life. What we're doing is sparking something within them, a relatable issue to say, wow, I can do these things and I can stabilize. I can do these things and I can heal. I can do these things and I can choose life. They chose to stay alive. Thousands of letters from across the world saying that this message saved their life, the storytelling I do. It didn't. They did the work. They stood up in 2 feet of water when they were drowning, and they did the work to survive and survive every day. And this film, we just released our trailer video that just got 265,000 hits online, and it continues to grow. It's a beautiful movie about hope. We see all these movies that come out about suicide that are so devastatingly depressing. We're making something that is powerful and can change a life.
When's the release date for that film?
Spring 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't want to dwell on this, but take us back to that day. So you said, a lot of things happened between your jump and then the Coast Guard showing up. And
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to give away the whole story here, but I think if people can't go, they are still curious about
Sure,
what happened.
sure.
So in a nutshell, what can you tell us about what happened?
All right. Well, the first thing that occurred when I went over that rail, there was someone who made a phone call to a person that she knew in the Coast Guard who were manning the waters of that bridge, which is why they got to me as quickly as they did. And I'll go into detail in the speech so you understand that story. In the water, there was an animal that came to my aid and for quite some time kept me afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind me. Remember, I kept going down. I would have kept going down until this creature circled beneath me and bumped me up, and you'll find out who that was or what that was at the speech tonight.
Okay, well that was a seal.
Oh, they're giving it away.
Not everybody can be there today, but they're gonna.
All right, it was a sea lion.
Okay, so what happened?
Oh.
I mean, a seal.
A sea lion, yeah.
A sea lion. You think that they're gonna get away from you,
All over the world, sea lions, dolphins, and even some sharks have come to the aid of human beings that are about to drown. All over the world, all throughout the history of mankind. This situation wasn't any different. I don't look at it like that. I look at it like it was a miracle. This thing came, circled beneath me, kept me afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind me. Why didn't it leave before the Coast Guard boat arrived behind me? Why did it stay there until they got there? So, yeah.
So as a result of this experience and what happened, do you feel that you are now a more spiritual person, or?
Oh no, I always have been. I'm a very faithful person since childhood. I was Catholic school since kindergarten. So, it is my faith. I have a firm belief in God. I'm not pressing that upon anyone. I don't press upon that in my speeches. I just let you know how I feel.
And so, what is your message for the public? And I know it's deterrence, and you're telling people you can reach out, but what's the overall effect that you have on people when you speak to audiences like you'll be speaking in Reno?
I think the bottom line is sharing this message of hope because we know it helps people heal. That's the idea. That's the transformative nature of a story. Is that it's not about my story or me. It's about storytelling that imparts some form of wisdom on someone who didn't have it before, to say, okay, maybe I can keep going, and maybe I can battle these thoughts one day at a time and win, and stay here.
Have you met the other survivors or any of the other survivors?
I've met a few, yeah.
And what do you talk about? What do you tell them?
When you've survived that and you have that in common with someone, there's not much you need to tell them. The times that I spoke with those individuals, we just kind of existed together. It wasn't something where we needed to talk about it for hours. It's great to meet you, glad you're here, and I understand.
And tell us more about your memoir now, your book.
Oh.
You talked about the film, and is the film based on the book?
No, Cracked Not Broken, Surviving and Thriving After a Suicide Attempt is my unconventional memoir. It's my life story that you couldn't capture in one hour of a presentation. It talks about my infancy being very traumatic, living in the foster care system for the first 9 months of my life, losing very key family members in my birth family to drugs and alcohol, things like that. And then my story that I just briefly touched upon with you, and the current events that are going on today. The film, Suicide: The Ripple Effect, is a documentary idea that I've had for a long time and that we're putting together.
Is there anything else you want to say I did not ask you about today?
I think it's really important that we take a second to recognize the Native American culture and the devastating wake of destruction that is being caused in that culture across America and the globe as it pertains to suicides. We tend to, when we get funding in America for suicide prevention organizations or communities, we often forget the Native American community. I'm part Arawak Indian, which is why it's really important to me to get this message across. In Australia, Aboriginal men, Native Australian men, are 7 times more likely to die by suicide than non-Aboriginal men, and the numbers are staggeringly similar to someone to a Native American in America, in Canada, really all over the world, Indigenous communities, and we're losing them left and right, and they're living in very poor standards across this country in reservations that aren't held up to be accountable to keep people well. They're not eating proper foods. Their levels and numbers of alcoholism rates are skyrocketing through the roof, and they're dying. And I feel that issue is terribly ignored, especially in this latest election. I didn't see one candidate talk about the Native American culture that is so rich with history in this country, and it breaks my heart. And I think we need to take action. Certainly I'm working toward talking to more Native American communities on a regular basis to try to help that cause and to bring them wellness programs that might actually make a dent.
Finally, and I just am curious, so we have a suicide prevention week.
Yeah.
But are you concerned that beyond that people are going to forget about this issue?
No. I will tell you this. I've worked in this field for 15 years. And in the last 10 years, I have seen people report and talk about this topic, I would say, 10 times more than ever before. You're doing it right now, and I appreciate it. Allowing us to spread this message right here on your radio station is a beautiful thing. And I think if we can spread a message that is educational, entertaining, and intriguing, and important, we can help change the narrative moving forward. One of the things I tell people they can do, really simple thing they can do right now, instead of saying commit suicide, because that sounds like someone's committing a terrible crime, you can say died by suicide from depression. It's a much more accurate portrayal of what goes on. That's a stepping point onto the changing the narrative today.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because recently the Associated Press sent out a memo to all the reporters across the land that said we no longer say commit suicide because it's not always a crime.
Yeah.
And so we have to change our thinking about, the word commit. Yeah. But I'm glad that you brought that up.
And that's fantastic. I did see that from AP. They're doing some great work in media recognition of that. And one of the people one of the persons that's actually pushing that movement forward is a good friend of mine, Dr. Daniel J. Reidenberg of the SAVE organization, Suicide Awareness Voices of Education. And he has been pushing forward proper, safe messaging in media for a very long time, and it's now starting to really expand. So it's just going to get better from here. It's going to take time and effort, but we got this.
Okay. Well, Kevin Hines, I want to thank you for your time, and this is an important message, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for having me.
Okay. All right. Very good.